Hello there, and welcome to this episode of Wellness Quiz. My name is Subiri Obogo. I'm a medical doctor and specialist in public health medicine. Today, I want to talk about cholesterol numbers, or what you call the lipid profile. This is a test where your blood is taken to determine whether your cholesterol is raised or not. And this determines your risk for heart disease, things like stroke or heart attacks. Now, many people worry about cholesterol for good reasons. The World Health Organization estimates that 2.6 million people globally die due to a result of raised blood cholesterol. Now, this is about 4.5% of all deaths globally. So talk about cholesterol. Basically, we are referring to fat-like substance found in blood, too much of which can clog the arteries and increase your risk of heart attacks, strokes, and sudden death. Now, usually a lipid test requires that you fast overnight for about 10 hours. So usually the doctor will tell you not to eat any breakfast in the morning, meaning that the whole night you've not eaten anything, and then in the morning your blood is taken, and usually they measure 4 numbers. The first one is called total cholesterol, and total cholesterol is basically 3 numbers, which I'll explain. The second one is what you call LDL cholesterol. This is usually the bad cholesterol. This is the one that normally moves cholesterol from the liver into the tissues. The third number is HDL cholesterol. This is usually the good cholesterol, which moves cholesterol from the cells to the liver so that it can be removed from the body. And the last one is what you call triglycerides. So what is total cholesterol? Total cholesterol is basically 3 numbers. It is HDL cholesterol, the good one, plus LDL cholesterol, the bad one, and 20% of triglycerides. So these 3 numbers give you what you call total cholesterol. The second number is called LDL cholesterol, and usually this is, as I mentioned, the bad cholesterol, and ideally it should be below 100 milligrams per deciliter. Anything above that could indicate a higher risk. The third number is HDL cholesterol, which is the good cholesterol, and usually it's supposed to be above 40 milligrams per deciliter in men and above 50 milligrams per deciliter in women. Triglycerides is a type of fat which is very common in most of our food that we eat, things particularly saturated fats and also things like trans fats. So you find it in things like red meat, poultry, particularly the skin. You find it in cheese, milk, as well as processed meats, especially sausages and things like salami. Remember also consuming diet rich in saturated fats, especially in vegetable cooking oils and trans fats, will also increase your level of cholesterol. So triglycerides should be below 150 milligrams per deciliter. Now, one thing interesting about triglycerides is that although it's a fat, usually consuming a diet rich in sugars, that is things like table sugar, or sugar sweetened beverages, juices that contains sugar, or what you call sucrose, as well as refined carbohydrates, that's white flour, things like white chapati, white ugali, white rice, will actually increase your triglycerides in blood. So remember, it can, although it's a fat, it can be raised, it's elevated through consumption of sugars and refined carbohydrates. Also, alcohol can also increase your level of triglycerides. Also, if you don't exercise regularly, that can also increase your level of triglycerides. Also, if you're overweight, your BMI is, let's say, above 25, that can increase your triglycerides level. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is the units for cholesterol. Now, if you noticed, I've been giving my numbers in terms of milligrams per deciliter. So depending on which lab you are taking your test, there are two units in which cholesterol is expressed. One is milligrams per deciliter, and the other one is millimoles per liter. So it's good to know how to convert between these two numbers. So to convert something in milligrams per deciliter to millimoles per liter, you simply need to divide by 38.5. So for example, if my LDL cholesterol is 130 milligrams per deciliter, for me to convert this into millimoles per liter, I just divide that by 38.5. Now, if I want to convert back to milligrams per deciliter, then I multiply the millimoles per liter by 38.5. Now, remember this conversion of 38.5 is used for total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and HDL cholesterol. To convert triglycerides to millimoles per liter, we use a different number. So, how do I convert from milligrams per deciliter to millimoles per liter for triglycerides? From milligrams per deciliter to millimoles, I divide by 88.6. Now, to convert from millimoles to milligrams per deciliter, I multiply by 88.6. So remember, the conversion is different. So third thing I want to talk about is you've probably heard about LDL cholesterol particle size. There are two types: the small dense particles and the so-called large fluffy particles. Now, the lipid test does not distinguish between these two types of cholesterol, the small and the large. And sometimes this can raise a bit of confusion. The second point about size is that we know very well that the damage that from LDL cholesterol is usually determined by the ability of the particles to move from the blood into the endothelium or the wall of the arteries. That is where the plaque or the fatty deposit, which tends to clog the arteries, that's where it happens. And the third point here is that 80% of the LDL particles are usually the large fluffy types, where only 20% the small ones. So this has led some people to argue that the LDL cholesterol is not a very good measure of cardiovascular risk, because the majority of the particles are the large ones, and the large ones cannot enter the endothelium compared to the small ones. However, this is not necessarily correct. The issue is that once the particles have entered the blood vessels, they need to enter the arterial wall where the plaque is formed. Now, what determines how the particles enters the arterial wall? There is a special protein on the surface of LDL cholesterol, and this protein is called apolipoprotein B. This protein is the one which attaches to the receptors on the arterial wall, and then through an active transport system, the LDL cholesterol is pushed into the wall of the artery. Now, both the large and the small particles use this system to get into the arterial wall. Now, the difference is that once inside the wall, for the particles to cause much damage, they need to be retained within the wall. The small particles are more likely to remain within the wall compared to the large particles. However, if you consider how many particles, the large ones, the cholesterol particles within the large fluffy particles, then you find that the large fluffy particles deposit more cholesterol particles or molecules for every particle. So that offsets the size or the advantage of the small LDL cholesterol particles that are retained within the wall. So overall, what studies have shown is that in terms of the risk for cardiovascular disease, there is no difference between the small and the large particles because of what I've just explained. So remember, the test can be used to assess the risk for both. So LDL is a very good measure of cardiovascular disease. The only thing about size is that people who have what you call metabolic syndrome and those who have insulin resistance. Metabolic syndrome basically covers the following things: high blood pressure, high blood sugar, when the HDL cholesterol is elevated, things like large waist circumference. This is what constitutes the metabolic syndrome. People with this condition usually tend to have the small, dense LDL particles, whereas people with genetic familial hypercholesterolemia, a condition where people are born with high levels of cholesterol, usually tend to have the large fluffy particles. So the particle size really doesn't determine the risk that you have. So thank you very much for listening. My name is Video Bogo. I'm a medical doctor and specialist in public health medicine. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel through the link which I'm going to share below there. Until next time, bye bye.